All right, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Declaration of Independence and how it was written and when it was written and who wrote it and some different things like that. It was written actually by Thomas Jefferson. And the original document, the Declaration of Independence, actually condemned the slave trade, but in discussions in the Continental Congress when they were deciding to ratify it, they removed that because they needed the support of the southern colonies. The real purpose of the Declaration of Independence was really to announce to the world the reasons for our breaking from Great Britain. And it lists the colonies' grievances against the Crown and the Parliament. It's also heavily influenced by the Enlightenment. Guys like John Locke. Thomas Jefferson takes a lot of what he says from John Locke. The famous phrase to come out of the Declaration of Independence was, of course, that our inalienable rights were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke takes a slightly different approach. He says that they were actually life, liberty, and property, with actually property being the most important to John Locke's way of thinking. And so Thomas Jefferson takes a little bit of poetic license, but more or less borrows the inalienable rights directly from John Locke. Um, Not everybody ends up agreeing with the Declaration of Independence. The folks who think we should not declare our independence from Great Britain are called Loyalists or sometimes Tories, and they remain loyal for many different reasons. Some of them just out of religious belief. They believe that the authority is given from God, and so to overthrow the king would be to rebel against God. Some people remain loyal because of their occupation. They were government employees, and so that's how they made their living, by working for the crown. Or they were in charge of a business that was dependent upon government contracts. And so obviously those folks are going to remain loyal because that's again their livelihood. The wealthy are usually not in favor of rebellion. They like things consistent because, well, quite frankly, things are going well for them. So why would they want them to change? And so they oftentimes, in many situations, are not going with rebellions. Ethnic rivalries. Sometimes certain ethnicities might go ahead and side with the British because they feel like if there's independence, their rights are going to be overwhelmed, and they like that the British government protects certain rights. Some people were simply scared. Their presence of British troops, they didn't feel like they could overthrow them, so um, they chose to remain loyal. The Loyalists then, of course, ended up on the losing side, and after the end of the American Revolution, many of them left peacefully. They would go either back to Great Britain or many times went to Canada, actually, um, and ends up being a rather amicable separation between the two. The Declaration itself reads as follows: When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume, among the powers of the earth, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. These are the words Thomas Jefferson wrote, and which eventually became our Declaration of Independence. It's interesting to note that while Jefferson wrote it, um, he's probably not responsible for getting it passed. The guy who asked him to write it was actually John Adams. John Adams was the big pusher behind the Declaration of Independence. And if Thomas Jefferson is the father of the Declaration, some people will say that Adams is its mother. Um, he actually asked Jefferson to write it. He knew that Jefferson was a gifted writer, but Jefferson was a terrible speaker. Adams was a gifted public speaker, and so when the Declaration came to the floor, written by a Virginian, Thomas Jefferson, it was Adams who defended it. Ironic because the two of them, Jefferson and Adams, ended up being bitter political rivals and political enemies during their time when they were active in the early colonial government and early American government. Um, an interesting story in and of itself. But that'll do it for today.